but the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless,
Yes,
spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't, computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
Timeless.
Timeless.
Well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it time? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function, it takes time.
No, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent.
Yes, you have to be logically coherent.
Oh no, this computer is amazing.
No.
This is a debate between Christian philosopher William Lane Craig and atheist scientist Louis Wolpert on whether God exists. Now, I love this debate for a couple of reasons. One, there are several insightful things that the Christian gets to say that I think are really helpful, but then also it's hilarious. I don't know whether it's intentional or unintentional, but these guys are kind of funny in the midst of getting here. So now what I've done is I've extracted all of the things they said about the beginning of the universe and who made God. But stay with me to the end, because the way that the Christian philosopher just kind of turns everything on its head at the last moment by introducing one concept is both profound and hilarious. Watch this.
So, why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? Where did it come from? There must have been a transcendent cause which brought the universe into being. Now, as the cause of space and time, this being must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well. Why? Well, first of all, because this event must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Now, there are only two kinds of things that fit that description: either abstract objects like numbers or an intelligent mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. Therefore, it follows that the cause of the universe is a personal, transcendent mind.
But the first problem is, if God exists, who created God? And why has God got a human form? You know, I think God would be, if there were a God, I'm sure be much more imaginative than to be like one of us. Good Lord, would he have backache? Yeah, I mean, that he should take on a human form is natural from a historical point of view, because as I'll explain in a moment. But to think that God, who might have done all these things, was human, seems to me bizarre in the extreme. And of course, there's zero evidence for it.
Okay, I just want to jump in real quick and just point out that whether somebody in your family taught you this, or even somebody in your church or whatever, the Christian position is not that God the Father has a physical body, particularly a human physical body. The idea, as Dr. Craig has just argued, is that God exists spacelessly, timelessly, and beyond matter. He transcends those categories, which means he doesn't have a physical body. But now as we jump back in, stay with me, because this turns out beautifully.
Now, his third argument that he offered was the simple question, who created God? Well, this is not at all difficult to answer. A timeless, eternal being cannot have a cause. As Keith Ward points out in his book, God, Chance, and Necessity, if one asks what caused God, the answer is that nothing could bring into being a reality which wholly transcends space-time and which is self-existent. To fail to grasp such an idea is to fail to grasp what God is. Moreover, I have given an argument that there exists such a being, namely my first argument based upon the beginning of the universe. It leads us to
he's
the
explained this like twice now.
Of a timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and uncaused eternal being.
We just don't know. I mean, I don't think that
I'm sorry. Something about it's no insult to him. It's just something about the way he said that at exactly that moment just struck me really funny. Sorry.
has really come into many philosophers' minds. We scientists, by contrast, do say sometimes, terribly sorry, we just at the moment don't know and may never know. But rather than say that, I'm afraid believers invent this mythical creature who has no basis, and when I say how is God created, it's denied that he is so amazing, it's a he by the way, in a human form, he's so amazing, he didn't need a creator. The universe needed a creator, yes, but not God. Come on, you can't take that seriously in any way whatsoever.
What about the question, well, what caused God? In his last speech, Professor Wolpert says, well, the universe needs a creator, therefore God needs a creator as well. Not at all. That doesn't follow. Remember the premises of the argument I gave. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Something cannot come into being out of nothing. But if something is eternal and timeless, then it doesn't fall under that first premise. It doesn't need a cause. Even atheists like Daniel Dennett recognize that if eternal verities exist, like numbers or mathematical objects, they don't need a cause because they never come into being. They don't begin to exist.
This is like the third time he's answered this.
The concept of an eternal, self-existent, necessary being, and therefore the answer is simply that God is uncaused. He is self-existent.
You keep on saying, if I may say, that you need a creator for the universe, but you refuse to allow that God himself should have been created. I find that very weird.
He's answered your question like 3 times now, why God doesn't need a cause, and it's because God stands outside of time and so has no temporal beginning or ending. You may disagree with that, but I don't know what there is about that is hard to understand as a concept. I mean, it needs to be addressed.
I keep on coming back that if there's a cause for the creation of the universe, there also has to be a cause for the creation of God. And that God should take on this human form, once again, is very difficult, to put it mildly, and goes against everything that we know in science.
Now, I've tried to fulfill my share of the burden of proof tonight and give evidence for God's existence. But all Dr. Wolpert has offered against God is that God needs a creator. I don't think I need to repeat the argument here.
Yeah,
everything that begins to exist has to have a cause, but a timeless, necessary, self-existent being cannot be caused. It would be incoherent, logically, to say God has a cause.
Who therefore created God?
Well, to answer that question again, God is, by definition, a self-existent, timeless, necessary being. So if there is a God, yes, if there is a God, we'll talk about possibilities. If there is a God, there cannot be a cause of such an entity, any more than there can be a cause of the number 7 or the property of being blue.
Yeah.
Things that begin to exist, that come into being, have causes.
Makes perfect sense.
But this is not a mere matter of speculation, that there's more than a tiny bit of evidence on the table.
But he's saying
evidence for what?
Evidence for a beginning of the universe.
Yes.
Well, we know that. Nobody disputes
All right,
that.
well, that's what I'm offering in this first argument, is the evidence.
But
why?
because there's a
Because nobody
beginning
disputes
doesn't
it.
imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah,
that
but it
therefore,
doesn't. But the cause hasn't got to be God.
well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless,
Yes, I know.
spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't. Computers are designed by people. I mean,
No, this is a self-designing computer.
Timeless.
Timeless.
well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it time? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function. It takes
Oh
time.
no, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent.
Yes, you have to be logically
Oh no,
coherent.
this
And
computer
besides-
is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
And a computer is a physical.
Not this computer.
Object.
Oh
Well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical, It's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer.
So if you missed what happened, Dr. Craig has argued that the universe must be timeless, spaceless, not made of matter, and must be personal, must be a mind. And in response to this, the atheist scientist, in order to get out of the teeth of the argument, has tried to parody God by saying, by giving it all of these similar qualities, but then just saying, no, it's not God, it's a computer. But when you make a computer spaceless, timeless, non-material, personal, exceedingly powerful, and all these kind of things, you're just, and this is what Craig pointed out, he kind of jujitsu'd the whole thing back around to say, you're just giving an argument for God's existence. You're just describing God and calling God a computer. I would have only added, welcome to theism, computer theist. It's a pretty great moment, and one of many times that William Lane Craig took the gas out of an atheist argument. In fact, if you like to see me talk about a more recent debate than that one where Dr. Craig interacts with an atheist, then click the video that's on the screen right now. And by the way, before you go, I'd love it if you'd like, comment, and subscribe.